What's up, YouTube? It's your boy AP, and today we're back with the classic Spark Stormweaver for patch 0.4. Stormweaver just got buffed, especially with the addition of limit spells and a much better ability to scale them through our upgraded Ascendancy nodes. Orbis Storms is powerful with limit scaling right out of the gate, and this patch is bringing other interesting options into the mix, such as Lightning Storm. On top of that, infusions are stronger than ever across the board. Infused Spark is obviously a standout, being one of the most popular spells in the game, and Comet is looking really good too for higher budget cast on crit endgame setups. But today we are not talking about these expensive setups. Today is all about League start and how to get through the campaign comfortably. Spells have never been the easiest way to cruise through the campaign, so I have done multiple rounds of testing to get ready for this league. My comfiest setup is already uploaded on my channel as a full unedited walkthrough done in solo self-found. That means I use no trading, no outside help, just pure solo progression. That is the exact version I'm going to share with you guys today. The way I structured my starter build is that it actually ends up working for every elemental spell in the game, and this was not the original goal. It's an unintended benefit from structuring our starter for player comfort first and foremost. What we are doing is abusing two mechanics that have crazy synergy together. First, we are using limit scaling with Unleashed support to pump out a bunch of Orbis Storms with a single click. Then we trigger those Orbis Storms to shotgun packs by casting Spark, which is also linked to Unleash. So with these two button presses, you're dropping 3 Orbis Storms that each fire off their own lightning chains every time we cast Spark. Because of Unleash, we are getting triple casts of Spark with one tap. That is extremely efficient use of keybinds. You really can't get better than this for a comfy mapper and campaign clearer, which is tons of power on a budget. For bosses, we sack 3 big damage amplifiers to squeeze everything we can out of our 2 core spells. Sigil of Power gives us an extra more multiplier on our damage. Frostbomb and Elemental Weakness work together to shove boss resistances deep into the negatives, massively boosting our damage output. The end result, a very smooth playstyle where we deal a ton of damage without button mashing. Yes, we press a few extra buttons for bosses, but normal clearing is basically a relaxed rhythm between 2 skills. To support all this, we pass through an efficient passive tree that works, again, for every elemental spell in the game. That also means we are perfectly set up to experiment with the new elemental druid spells being added to this league. So while this build is called Spark Stormweaver because Spark is both the coolest looking spell in the game and my own personal favorite to play, you are not locked into it. If you'd rather run Arc or some other spell, you can follow this exact guide and literally just swap out Spark for whatever you want. That flexibility is the whole point of this setup. One comfy, proven league start that lets you experiment with almost any elemental spell instead of locking you into something specific while still cruising through the game. Before I start breaking down the leveling process, I want to make sure you guys are aware of all the different resources you'll have available to use if you're playing my build. So first off, we have the hub of the build, which is the mobalytics page, Spark Stormweaver League Starter. This is going to have everything I'm about to tell you on how to level written down if you don't want to listen to me. And since this is a leveling video and this is a leveling league start page, it doesn't really focus on endgame min-maxing. However, as the hub of the build, we are going to have a section right at the top which shows you different options you can take the build. So you could obviously just stick with this Orbis Storms Stormweaver setup through maps and scale into Energy Shield and a bunch of defenses with your remaining points. And that's probably what I'd recommend to start off with. But if you want a ton of power for very cheap, Warp Stormweaver budget build, this is an endgame setup that still works extremely well. It's probably more damage per investment than what we're doing. Lightning Warp is you either love it or you hate it type of playstyle, so you can check out the video and see if this is something for you. There's obviously some min-max Stormweaver stuff down here for high budget later on if you want some ideas. And realistically, on the first couple days, I want to test out Spark and how it synergizes with some of the different limit mechanics, as well as the new infusion synergies. So we're going to be making a new page that'll be linked right here for an endgame setup of whatever I feel works best using these new mechanics there. Again, you should favorite this page and check back because everything you need will be updated onto this page. And if it's some endgame important piece, it will be put right at the top. Next up, we do regular YouTube updates, and you're going to find the important videos in a playlist. Now, I've played Stormweaver every single league since launch, so there is some evergreen material on how to play Spark in this YouTube playlist. You can take a look at it. There's a ton of interesting stuff. And all the Twitch streams are also archived on an archive channel on YouTube in case you missed the streams. Now, I will be streaming daily, and that is a good source of information right there in of itself. Twitch.tv/animeprincess. For the league start specifically, we have a vendor item regex. So what you would do is you would copy this, including quotations, and paste it into a vendor's search box, and it's going to highlight items of interest. And this is actually important to do on Spark because spells are somewhat gear reliant, and this is going to highlight even white bases, which you should buy, and then you would transmute an AUG, and you're going to try and fish for some of the stats you see down here. I'm listing stats in order of importance. And that's how I was able to have such a comfortable run in SSF. If you do look at the league start walkthrough on my channel, we were making use of this regex. This is night and day if you're playing in SSF, and if you're playing in trade, you might not even have to trade for gear. However, there are some links to get a more powerful staff, because in softcore trade, you really should be using trade on day one to make sure your power is adequate. There's a loot filter, and this will highlight stuff through leveling. There's also an endgame loot filter, and you can just find it through this link. Another valuable resource would be my Discord. There's over 6,000 players in there, and you can use that if you have any questions when I'm not streaming, as well as to make friends and share any discoveries with fellow Stormweaver players. And I have an in-game chat channel. You join it by typing /global8686, and I'll be in there, as well as a lot of other people playing Stormweaver. One last thing I'd like to touch on is a new feature the mobalytics staff are rolling out called Track My Build. So if you are currently subscribed to Mobalytics Plus, which removes all the ads from the website, you will gain access to this feature, and it lets you look at all my characters. You can choose one. It'll show you guys in real time how I'm changing my skill gems, my passive tree, etc. So you can possibly catch some changes even before I'm able to update this page. And if you sign up through my build guide here, I will get a kickback, but I don't want it to sound like you should be doing this, because realistically, I am going to be very diligent to keeping all the skill gems up to date if we make any changes. And we're going to be pushing out the YouTube video updates to make sure everybody's on the same page with what the best tech is. As for the leveling progression, for skill gems, you're going to grab Spark at the beginning of Act 1. You just get this for free. And normally I would suggest going with Pierce, although in this past patch, we've been so starved for support gems that I'm actually skipping it. It's going to make the first few zones a little bit harder. However, I don't think we need Pierce because Orb of Storms chains so much. And we are going to have 2 Orb of Storms very early on, and then 3 pretty soon afterwards. So we have 3 of these very high damage abilities chaining across the screen. We don't actually need to use Spark for clear too much. So we're putting on Unleash, which means Spark will build up 3 charges, and then you press it, it launches them all at the same time. And Controlled Destruction is just a very good damage link. Unleash is so nice in the campaign because realistically you shouldn't be killing every single monster. You run between big packs and blow up the packs, so you'll have time for this Unleash to build up his charges. And even on bosses, Unleash is really good because it's passively building up the charges, so you can just hold Spark down. Don't feel like you have to wait to build up max charges. Frostbomb is incredibly important to use on bosses because it inflicts exposure, and bosses don't have a way to reduce exposure, so this just drastically amplifies damage by reducing their resistances. And I like to have cast speed on this just so we're able to get it on the ground a little bit quicker. But realistically, the main skills here are Spark and Orb of Storms in terms of supporting them with your support gems. So Orb of Storms, we have Overabundance to have 2 of them, and then Unleash, so we only have to press the button once to spawn all the Orb of Storms. Flame Wall is pretty strong early because it buffs the Spark damage when it passes through, but I would say this is by far the least important skill, and you don't really have to worry about pressing this button unless you want a little bit of extra damage for whatever reason. You're going to be able to choose Arctic Armor or Mana Remnants, and they are both good. Arctic Armor makes you more tanky, obviously, and Mana Remnants means you probably won't need to press your Mana Flask nearly as much. So that's sort of a preference-based thing. And as for the passive tree for Act 1, it is entirely damage. Just go up here, grab all the damage nodes. A little tip for early in Act 1 is you can actually use the staff implicit, whether it be the fireball type thing or lightning bolt, depending on what you have, because that costs 0 mana and it's actually really strong if you keep upgrading your staffs. And it scales off of all this increased damage. So that's actually going to be really useful for maybe the first half hour of the game. And then you can kind of postpone this extra mana regeneration to go for more damage. But at some point, you're going to want to get the mana regeneration down here, and you're going to stop using the free spell on your staff. And cast speed is really important when you have multiple buttons because it is the speed of which you get the spells on the ground. So just in general, you want to prioritize cast speed when possible. Now for Act 2, the skill gems don't really change. Some of the supports change, and I don't want to read through every different support, so I think you guys should be following the mobalytics page, but as you can see, skill gems basically the same. And for the passive tree, going over here buffs Frostbomb dramatically. And you cast Frostbomb only on bosses, but that is how we kill the bosses really easily. If you feel like you have mana issues, going down here will solve all of your mana issues. And then I would probably get this first just to have a little bit more comfort. And we'll wrap up Act 2 by going over to all this nice spell damage cast speed, which finishes off with +1 limit. So now Unleash Orb of Storms gives us 3 Orb of Storms, which is a massive power boost in of itself. Through Act 3, now we're starting to get a lot of options for skill gems. For the first Jeweler's Orb, I would probably put it on Orb of Storms and then put on Considered Casting to get that 35% more damage. Orb of Storms works in that every time you cast a spell while standing inside of it, it will also cast its spell. So that's why Spark with Unleash is so nice, because it's one button's triggering all the Orb of Storms 3 times each. And you will be like casting Frostbomb, Elite Weakness, that's also triggering Orb of Storms. Every single thing you press while in Orb of Storms will let all 3 Orb of Storms nuke the enemies. So Sigil of Power, I do have specific instructions on this, and there's a link to a video guide on how to set this up. But to get Sigil of Power, there's no skill gem for this. It's the implicit on a Chiming Staff, and you can set it up so even if the actual damage mods on the Chiming Staff are bad, you just put it in your second weapon set, and it will automate casting Sigil of Power and then swapping back to your good staff to do everything else. Elemental Weakness, again, you just press this on the boss with the Frostbomb to get extra damage. On my practice run, I did not use Mana Tempest. Mana Tempest is a lot of damage for Spark, and if you want to use this, and I think you probably should because it'll make the game even easier, you don't want to stand in it for very long. It gives you a lot more damage, and it also lets the Sparks clear much better by giving him the split tag. But yeah, this is massive drain of mana, so just stand in it, nuke the wave, and get out of it as quickly as possible. In Act 3, you also get more Spirit, so now you can have both Arctic Armor and Mana Remnants. For the passive tree, these are some other really efficient nodes that buff our Frostbomb, and there's some good damage nodes over here as well. Going through Act 4, skill gems don't change. Some of the supports might change a little bit. And for the passive tree, Elemental Equilibrium is very strong because next patch it's going to turn our lightning infusions into cold infusions. We'll automatically be able to generate the cold infusions for Spark to trigger, because before then we get them occasionally through Frostbomb, but we're not really using Frostbomb in packs. But now we'll be generating a lot more lightning infusions So those will fuel a ton of extra damage on Spark. And then the last up, the Interludes. So again, we're just adding in some more supports. The skull gems are pretty much locked in. And we're grabbing some defense at this point. So there's some defensive nodes here, defensive nodes here. And moving through the early endgame, your goals should be to scale energy shield on your gear, cap your resistances, and then get more energy shield. So we're eventually going to want to path over to Chaos Inoculation and go CI. But before we can do that, we want to have decent amounts of energy shield on our gear and a lot more of the energy shield points. And then scaling stuff like increased recharge rate and faster start of energy shield recharge rate are pretty important as well. A change in the reservation gems for early end game would probably be dropping either one of these for convalescence once you start to have more reliance on the energy shield. All right, appreciate you guys sticking around till the end. I will be live on twitch.tv/animeprincess on Friday for the league start. We should be playing this build. I'm going to be doing a 24-hour stream, most likely. Like, comment, subscribe. Helps me out a lot. And obviously, you got to subscribe to make sure you get the build updates as soon as they come out. All right, take care.